Robert Forrester with me, Chief Executive of Vertu Motors, which you'll know the trade names: Bristol Street Motors, Macklin Motors, operating 160 car dealerships across England, Wales and Scotland. Morning, Robert.
Morning, Sean.
Morning, and Fiona Cincotta, Senior Market Analyst at City Index. Hi, Fiona.
Hello, good morning.
Morning. Fiona, just picking up on what Ian was talking about there with the various tax plans, and there'll be much more conversation to be had as we whittle down the candidates or we get more detail from the various candidates on their specific promises. But how much investors going to be watching what potentially could be quite a stark difference between some candidates as we get to the final two or three?
Yeah, I think it is going to be something that's going to be watched quite closely. As you said, right now, I mean, it's still a little bit too broad, and there are just too many hats in the ring for anyone or for investors to really be able to sort of focus too intently on one candidate. So when it does get whittled down, I think that's when we're going to see a lot more attention on exactly what those policies are. And that's going to be sort of, as far as taxes are concerned, as far as the pound is concerned as well. That's where we're sort of expecting to see quite a big impact if it was going to show up anywhere. So, I mean, we know that last week when Boris Johnson resigned, the pound did actually go a little bit higher, sort of, almost a relief rally that he'd finally stepped down. But I think, the other thing to bear in mind is these tax cuts can actually be considered inflationary. So that is something that we just need to also bear in mind, because obviously we're in a time of extremely high inflation and it's expected to go higher. So if, we then have more money available swashing around the system because taxes are being cut, that can actually lift inflation as well.
Robert, what are you keeping your eye out for in all this?
Well, we keep talking about tax cuts, but one of our issues is that government spending is outrunning really its ability to raise tax. And if we're going into a consumer-led recession and we've got higher interest rates, then tax take's probably going to go down. And no one's really talking about government spending and the size of the state and what their vision is for the size of the state. It seems to be a very one-dimensional discussion around tax, and that does worry me.
Where would you like to see the conversation go then?
Well, it's interesting that the one bloke who's actually seen the numbers isn't in favour of massive tax cuts. So I do suspect that the finances of the government are not in great state. So however people might fancy tax cuts, and it would certainly help with the cost of living, I think the serious people have got to have a discussion about, can we afford tax cuts when we've got higher interest rates and higher levels of government debt than we've seen for many a decade.
Gwen's been in touch saying talk of tax cuts is scary. I thought there was an international agreement on minimum level of corporate tax. I think there is, isn't there, Gwen? Is it 15%? Is the general international agreement on about as low as it can go, and it seems like, again, something we may well get into if it becomes a real pinch point in the leadership debate for the Conservative Party about levels of corporation tax, about how easy it is for some of the candidates if they want to actually implement a lower than 15% corporation tax, as a few have mentioned. Is that even feasible for the UK to actually collect that? It seems like potentially not. David in Crowthorne says the real issues for new Conservative leader are not tax but demonstrating trust, convincing people they will ruthlessly eliminate sleaze and cost of living, particularly for less well-off. Another saying, it's all right these candidates talking about tax cuts, but to save that money they cut public spending. The people who have that money taken away from them by the NHS and councils are the people who can least afford to have the services removed. They say, well, you can buy this service or that service, but the service is not there. Get a grip. 85058. Let me know your thoughts this morning on this. Robert, that idea Fiona mentions there about inflationary policies being put in place, if there are a raft of tax cuts, I mean, does that kind of thing happen? Do you see, in your time as boss, when there have been lower periods of tax rates or huge tax cuts at any one point, does it become inflationary?
Well, it can certainly bolster consumer spending. You put more money in people's pockets and they will spend it. The issue we've got at the moment is everything is going up in price and people's earnings aren't. So we're going to have quite a deflationary consumer environment, I think, for the next 12 to 18 months. Tax cuts can promote economic growth, there's no doubt about that, but they've got to be the right tax cuts. And the government's going to have a difficult job balancing the inflation versus the long-term economic growth argument, I think.
Robert, for your, right now, what you're seeing in your dealerships around the country, what is the mood? I've circled a few stories in the papers today about, what a few takes on the economy right now. Institute of Directors survey found that 2/3 of corporate leaders expect price rises to persist longer than the Bank of England hopes. Maybe not expecting a peak until spring, so that's prices. Businesses brace for a damaging recession. Many British companies preparing for the worst as they battle rising costs and a fall in consumer demand. How's your mood?
I think we're definitely seeing customers walking in wanting to reduce their monthly payment on a car because I think they see energy prices particularly going up and squeezing their ability to spend money. That's actually quite difficult to reduce your payment on a car because clearly interest rates are going up and prices of cars have gone up. So I think consumers are in a pinch point, and I think all the betting is on a recession in the back end of the year. I don't think anybody would be surprised by that. We've got the strange thing as well that we've got lack of workers in the UK. The story this morning about dairy shortages, butter hitting £6 500 grams. We've still got 400 vacancies, down from 500 6 months ago, but still 400 vacancies across our business.
Right. And any sign of filling them? How's the market feeling to you, the labour market?
Oh, no, it's very, very tight.
Not loosening?
Yeah, absolutely not. No, it's very, very tight. And I think that's going to continue for quite a while. There is absolutely no doubt that a lot of people during the pandemic made decisions to either come out of the labour market or to reduce the amount of time they wanted to spend in it. And I think employers are really struggling to find workers. I mean, my 19-year-old's working in a pub earning £10.50 an hour.
But still working in a pub, the amount of landladies we've had on Wake Up to Money though, who've said to us in recent weeks, do you know what? The people are saying to us, don't really fancy those hours, to be honest. We'll just get a job elsewhere. Yeah,
and she's working long hours, but she's enjoying it.
Oh, that's good.
I'm pleased to say.
Yeah, and I guess maybe a phase of life where actually those hours are not, are compatible with other parts of life. Whereas I guess if people are maybe a bit more established into their careers and starting to think longer term, they're able to be a bit picky with that. Do you find that with are you having to almost, pay is obviously a big thing, but the terms and conditions around it, are people being a bit demanding over that with you?
I think people have reassessed their life during the COVID lockdowns, and a lot of people are trying to seek greater work-life balance. Now, it'll be interesting to see whether that survives a significant recession, whether there's significant pressure on earnings. But so far, one of the biggest issues I think facing employers is, some people might want to work from home a couple of days a week. We're certainly looking at hours and how long people are actually at work and providing a lot more flexibility and a lot more work-life balance. It's probably, apart from filling vacancies, probably our second biggest issue in terms of the workforce. And we employ over 6,500 people, is how we can retain people and provide them with a high degree of work-life balance.
Fiona Cincotta, City Index. The pound against the euro, Fiona, a bit of a change in tack. But when I was looking at the various prices coming in on a Monday morning, and the pound is up above €1.18 this morning. So I think it drifted off a little bit. But right at the beginning of the month, back on the 1st of July, it was €1.16. Why's the pound got stronger against the euro in the last 10 days?
Do you know, actually, I think that's more of a euro story than it is a pound story. So what we've seen is the euro has really come off strongly across the board. So it's fallen, it's almost at parity with the US dollar. So it's almost €1 is $1. The euro has fallen versus the pound as well. It's fallen against all major currencies. And that's basically because of concerns over the economic health of Europe and the Eurozone, which again is very likely heading for a recession. But then you've also got this energy security issue that's going on in Europe as well. So, with concerns over the gas supply to Germany, to France, to major industries, which appears to be slowing, and fears are that it could be stopped and cut off completely from Russia. And that would, without a doubt, cause a huge recession, because it would immediately be cut to industry in order to protect houses. And so, you know, without that input of gas and energy, then there won't be much production, literally sort of drawing to a halt. So I mean, you know, good news for us holiday makers who might be going over to Europe. We have a slightly stronger pound against the euro. But yeah, I was going to say, together, both the euro and the UK, the economic outlook is quite dismal at the moment.
Every cent counts at the minute, doesn't it? If you're on an exchange rate and you're looking to go abroad in the coming days and weeks. A bit of an update in the airlines industry for you, the aviation industry. It's in the Times today. They've got a column by the boss of Menzies Aviation, Philip Yernig, who is the chief executive there. And he's talking about, so his business provides check-in services, baggage handling and refueling for the likes of EasyJet and American Airlines. And he says ministers are to blame for airport chaos. Rishi Sunak and Grant Shapps should share the blame for the delays and cancellation chaos at airports this summer, the boss of one of the country's leading airline service companies has said. So that's in the Times this morning. We had Willie Walsh talking to Sophie Rayworth yesterday. On the BBC. He's the director of the International Air Transport Association. You think, where do I know that name? He used to be the chief executive, the boss of British Airways and then the company that owns British Airways. And he said that flying will get more expensive for consumers without doubt. It's not cancellations and delays that are driving up costs, he says, but the rise in the price of oil.
Flights are getting more expensive because of the high price of oil, and it's been clear to everybody that that will be reflected in higher ticket prices. So, you know, the demand is strong. It's not as strong as it was in 2019. It is improving, but we're still quite a distance behind where we were in 2019. May was at about 67% of 2019. So there's still a gap between supply and demand, but I think it will close as we go through the summer.
But the basic line, the bottom line, is that flying is going to be more expensive for consumers.
Flying will be more expensive for consumers, without doubt. As I said, if you look at record oil prices, oil is the single biggest element of an airline's cost base. It's inevitable that ultimately the high oil prices will be passed through to consumers.
So that's Willie Walsh, who's now the head of that global trade body for the aviation industry, International Air Transport Association. 85058, I would very much like your thoughts this morning on how to get a cool night. The recommendations come thick and fast. David in Twickenham, put a big pan or washing up bowl of cold water near an open window to help keep you cool at night, says David. Lorraine says, get yourself a one-tog duvet. Turns your duvet cover into a thin quilt. One-tog. Is that much more than a sheet? Oh, Alan, Mr. Big Bucks has been in touch. He says, the best 400 quid I've ever spent. Hashtag wake up to money, hashtag Radio 5 Live, and then the key hashtag air conditioning. And he's attached a picture, which I can see. It's like some kind of dehumidifier looking unit. Oh, it's got a fancy thermostat thing. It's like going into a posh hotel with the numbers on it, and you change the dial. Alan, I don't know anybody with air conditioning in their home. That's incredible. You sent that from Cardiff as well. How often are you using that? 85058. Send us more of your thoughts. Have you got aircon? Is that something? I mean, I know we've talked about it a bit in the past. Environmentally, maybe not necessarily the best, but is that going to be something as, you know, these warmer days feel like they're becoming more frequent as the years go by, don't they? That we're going to be talking about more and more, and it all ties into the energy efficiency of our homes, doesn't it? And able to make them cool at the right times and warm at the right times. 85058 this morning. Julie in Burntwood has sent in a video of some high-paced fan on the ceiling built in. Wow, how often are you using that, Julie? That's good. That is good work. Is it doing a job? I can't quite play the audio here in the studio, so I'm not sure how much of a racket it's making, but that is impressive. Built-in fan into the ceiling. Comes in use handy every once in a while. Anne says if you've got a loft, open the hatch so the heat rises. Good tip, Anne. Please keep those ideas coming in about how to get a cooler night's sleep. We're going to need it on Wake Up to Money this week, I tell you. Otherwise, by Thursday, Friday, I hope Fliss is getting some sleep, because I'm going to be groggy come Thursday if I carry on at this rate. But I'm lining up these tips. Might try and borrow Alan's 400 quid aircon air conditioning machine that he's got as well. I've got Robert Forrester on the programme with the chief exec of Vertu Motors. Robert, how was your night? Was it all right? Nice and cosy?
It was actually pretty good. I got a good light duvet, but my son, because I went to bed early, obviously, my son was still banging balls into the back of the net in the back garden until about 10:30. So that did keep me awake for longer than I wanted to be. But never mind, he had his fun.
Excellent. If the sun's up till that late, I remember those glory days. Why not? Why not? Robert, you mentioned a bit earlier that customers at your 160 dealerships that you've got across the country were looking to cut monthly costs. What does that mean in reality? How do you actually do that?
Well, I suppose you're spending, I don't know, £400 a month on a car, and you feel your finances are tight. You might want to come and say, right, my budget's 350. So I need to swap into a smaller car, less spec, maybe an older car. So we're seeing a little bit of that. But given used car prices have gone up 25% in the past 12 months, clearly you are going to be into an older car and one with less spec on it.
So there's a bit of a sacrifice that needs to be made. Are people making that sacrifice?
Some people are. I've spoken to people very much so. I was out and about in Yorkshire at the weekend in dealerships, and we were running a 0% finance campaign on used cars, and that drove people into the dealerships because clearly they want to save on the interest, and they're looking at cars that actually do seem expensive compared to what they bought previously because we've seen significant inflation in used cars.
Do you think this crunch of people, really analysing every penny of their budgets, right across the board, almost, whatever you're earning right now, we know that the cost of living crisis is hitting those on lowest incomes very, very, very tightly right now. But could it change the approach in how people pay for their cars? Because we've seen this boom, haven't we, in monthly subscriptions almost, it feels like, for cars. And now all of a sudden people are going, blimey, that's a lot of money I'm shelling out every month.
Yeah, but people need cars, don't they? Let's be honest.
But they won't revert to cash payments and manage it that way.
If you actually look at the data, actually people are eating into their savings in the last few months to keep going. And actually people built a lot of cash savings up during the pandemic. But I think people are now going on holiday, eating into cash savings, and we get the potential utility bills in the autumn. So I think that'll be another squeeze. So I think people are absolutely wedded into monthly payments for cars because I don't think they want to use their cash particularly. So we're seeing, high levels of finance penetration as people want those monthly payments. It's a question of which monthly payment can they afford, I think, is the issue.
85058, like your thoughts this morning on car subscriptions, on Conservative Party leadership campaigns, on how to get a cooler night's sleep, and your thoughts on this one as well. How about Twitter? Are you following that one much? Twitter expected now to file a lawsuit against Elon Musk after the Tesla chief executive tries to cancel his takeover deal. It was worth $44 billion, £36.5 billion. We've seen for weeks Elon Musk, since he put the bid in and made it wasn't just a bid, it was getting a team, getting all the money together from different sources. Real proper serious bid for Twitter, the social media giant. But he's been saying for a few weeks that the platform is not being transparent about the number of bots, spam accounts on its platform. And in the last sort of 5 or 6 hours, we've had Twitter looking like they are confirming that they're set to sue Elon Musk now, appointing various lawyers to get that ball rolling. So it could well be this week that we hear that that starts to go to court. Twitter's independent board chair, Brett Taylor, said the company's committed to closing the deal and will go to the Delaware Court of Chancery to force Musk to make good on the agreement. I've got John Coffey with me, professor of law at Columbia Law School in New York, former member of the legal advisory board to the New York Stock Exchange as well, the economic advisory board to NASDAQ, that tech exchange in the US. Morning, John.
Good morning to you.
Morning. John, what do you make of this one? Is it going to be a big battle in the courts?
Oh, it'll be a big battle, but I would predict it'll be quietly settled. They'll begin to see which way the court is leaning. And I think basically Mr. Musk doesn't expect to come out with a victory. I expect that he is hoping that he can knock another 10 or 20 billion off the price he agreed to pay. That is, he's paying $55 a share, which comes to $44 million. The market right now is quoting Twitter at $36 a share. That's a huge disparity. Really, 1/3 of the total value of the company between what he's offered and what the market is valuing it at. And I think he's hoping that he can use that to leverage his way down to paying something like $30, $50, $45, whatever per share. I don't think he's got a great legal argument, but I think he can create enough of a headache that he'll have some negotiating leverage.
So is that how these things can play out then? They're just this court battle is a negotiating tool on both sides?
Let me give you the closest precedent. LVMH, which is the Vuitton Moet Hennessy firm owned by the big French family, they made a $16 billion offer a few years ago for Tiffany's being the diamond marketer, okay? They decided they paid too much, so they tried to call it off. There was litigation. It was a $16 billion offer, and all they were able to get by way of a reduction was about $480 million, or about 2%. So sometimes you don't get that much of a reduction, but you get something because of the nuisance value and the fact that Twitter would be destroyed right now if they aren't taken over by Musk, because much of their staff has left. They are sort of totally up in the air and organizationally destabilized.
So do you think it's likely that an outcome can be just Elon Musk winning in court and not taking over Twitter?
I think right now he would love to escape the deal. This is a case that people in this field use the term buyer's remorse. He overpaid. He wildly overpaid, but he was confident. And then right after he made this, signed the deal and did nothing to protect himself or do due diligence, the market turned on him and all social media stocks collapsed by about a half. That left him offering a huge price for a whole industry that was falling in value because of the threat of recession, high interest rate, and other things. So I think he would love to get out, but I don't think he ever really expects he can get out.
What do you make of the regulators' approach to Elon Musk over the years with his tweets about Tesla and tweeting things about company results,
I think
finances?
Mr. Musk generally behaves as if he were above the law. He reminds me of some other people, one whom was a former U.S. president and the other whom was a former British prime minister. They have the same approach towards law and compliance.
Elon Musk might come out smelling of roses in the end here, though.
Well, he's made more money than the other two. I'll certainly say that.
Yeah, that's a very, very fair point. John, where's it going to end? What's your prediction when we speak to you again in however many months or years this takes?
I think it won't take that many months. I think that they'll get a sense of which way the court thinks it should come out. And based on that, they'll start negotiating for a settlement. And the settlement might be a $4 or $5 billion reduction in the price, or it might be a 10 or 15 billion. Remember that the current price in the market is $36. And I think any dollar above that is some gain for Twitter. Because if they don't win in court or they don't settle in court, this stock will really fall further.
John, you're joining us from New York. Is that right this morning? Oh, this morning,
yes.
UK time. How hot does it get at the highest temperatures in New York? Because we're sweltering here with just merely mid-20s.
Well, this is midnight here, and it's 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
I forgot about Fahrenheit.
It's been in the 90s much of the last couple of weeks.
So 90s would be,
Fahrenheit.
Yeah. I'm just going to do a little Google because I back in the day I used to be able to make that calculation. So that's warm. 30 degrees, is that right? So how do you get
in the 30s?
How do you get through the night, John?
I can't do the conversion in my head.
Yeah, don't worry. The crux of my question, the reason I'm going around the houses with this is we've had plenty of our listeners getting in touch this morning about how to survive a warm night. How do you guys do it? Do you all have aircon, or are you? Do you have
right now it's a cool night, 68 degrees.
Yeah,
if you're here, you're going to close the windows.
Gotcha. So, fine, John, you're doing all right.
Okay.
We'll get somebody from the middle of Texas on Wake Up to Money and see if they've got any tips for us on how to survive.
You can get any temperature you want in the U.S. depending on where you go.
It's a big place. John, thank you very much. Appreciate you taking every question from all corners there. John Coffey there, Professor of Law at Columbia Law School in New York. I forgot about that Fahrenheit stuff. Tricia says, cool night's sleep. Wrap a frozen freezer block in a tea towel and put it in the bed next to you. A frozen hot water bottle does the same job, says Tricia in Warwick. Another saying, soak a hand towel in a bucket of cold water, wring it out, lay it over your feet. A cold hot water bottle on your feet, says Colin in Ipswich. Easy way to sleep, just take the quilt out and have the empty cover. I just need... Am I just fussier in my older age? I just need that tiny bit of weight on me. So that's why I'm all of a sudden into my togs, Googling this, that and the other over the weekend to find out what I need next. 85058, every tip here, much appreciated by me. I'm just getting a little sweat on here in the Wake Up to Money studios. And I'm sure by many listeners this morning as the temperature warms up across the UK. Right, the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants says that service delays at HMRC are an avoidable and unnecessary barrier to effective business. The tax authority made its online service dashboard of service delays fully public right at the end of June, on the 29th of June, and it shows backlogs as far back as last year. Now, if you're a small business and you're dealing with HMRC, you may well have been in touch with Wake Up to Money over the years because it's one of the most common topics that we get from people. So I'd really like your thoughts on this as to how big an issue this is. The first time we've heard this accountants group tell us about these problems. I've got Julie Selby with me, small business owner herself, runs Selby Marketing Services in Ashton-under-Lyne. Morning, Julie.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. I'm cooler than I was a few hours ago, which is the main thing. Forget the duvet chat, Julie. How are you and your relationship with HMRC?
A little bit grumpy at the moment. Yeah, to say the least. Yeah, certainly experiencing double standards.
What's the grumpiness and what are those standards?
Well, we are due a refund on corporation tax that was due end of August, which is our financial year last year. Started chasing it probably March, April time, with various results on the phone, waiting on the phone for some time. The accountant's been looking after it for me. And really from about, we were told we should have got it around about the 6th of May. Then the end of May, we were told it's cleared security and shouldn't be much longer. And the last one was that we should get it on the 25th of July. So it's about just under £8,000. We've had a statement to say nothing owing. And so it's all dealt with. We just haven't got it. However, in the meantime, being a couple of days late paying my VAT, I was swiftly issued a letter telling me that I'd be charged interest and don't do it again. So just a little bit upset with the double standards, that they're very swift to get on your back when you're a little bit late, and then I'm left waiting for
a large amount of money. Yeah. Do you expect it to land on the 25th?
I have no idea. It should be. The phrase was, it should be with us by the 25th of July.
Right. Do you have any? Do they give you reasons, or does anybody give you any reasons to why this is happening?
No, not at all. It does feel like it's very scripted. Yes, it's cleared and it shouldn't be too long. The question was asked, well, we were told this in May. It's all cleared. It should be with you. So it's very much, scripted.
I'm going to bring in
We're
Claire.
not getting any concrete reasons why it's not been issued.
No, and while you're waiting, sometimes the reasons do help. They didn't speed up the money necessarily, but just a bit of understanding helps, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And to be honest, I wouldn't really have been that bothered by it. I probably just carried on chasing it, to be honest. It was the fact that I've paid 3 VAT returns in the time I've been waiting for it. So they're taking it and chasing me for it when it's a bit late, but not really reciprocating.
Just going to bring Claire Clifford in on this, regional head of tax at the accountancy and business advisory firm Assets. Morning, Claire.
Morning. Hi.
Morning. Sound familiar to you?
Yeah, it does, unfortunately. A lot of our clients are in a similar position to Julie. Some of them have been waiting for several months for refunds to come through and are experiencing very similar patterns. Just calling, being told that it's in the process, being set dates, but then those dates pass. I mean, hopefully not for you, Julie. But yeah, it's a similar story.
Any tips, Claire, for people going through this?
Just keep pursuing it is my advice. Often referrals are made. You give HMRC a call, they say they're referring it to their back office. Sometimes that unfortunately doesn't happen or isn't successful. So my advice really is just to keep pursuing keep ringing, send emails. If the position gets so bad, you can make a formal complaint. So if you're not getting any joy from HMRC, you can actually write and make a formal complaint. That sometimes then speeds things up. But yeah, it is one of the things that we are seeing more and more, unfortunately, at the moment.
And do you have an idea of why this is happening at HMRC?
I can only assume a combination of things. I think COVID's hit HMRC pretty bad as well. They've had a lot of staff off. They've had to redeploy staff. I think the lack of experienced staff that are processing refunds, anything that's slightly out of the ordinary or unusual. I think it's just taking a lot longer to go through because some of those experienced staff have retired. They've been redeployed. And it is just causing problems at the moment.
Claire, thank you for giving us an update from the accountancy point of view there. Claire Clifford, Head of Tax at Assets. Julie, that £8,000, I mean, does it affect your cash flow? How does that affect how you're running your business?
Not massively. It's more the principle of it. Obviously, in a small business, cash is of the essence, and it can make or break you. I'm lucky that I've got my clients are all pretty hot on getting us paid, so that's not too bad. So day to day we're okay. There have been instances, certainly sort of around Christmas time and New Year, when things quieten down, where I've had to not pay myself, or I've had to pay some quite chunky supplier invoices myself, simply because the money wasn't there in the bank at the time. So that 8,000 would have covered those sorts of bills. So yeah, it has affected us.
Well, Julie, thanks for being with us this morning and telling us your story, because I'm sure there's many others who can empathise with that. And we often, whenever we speak about something like this, get many people getting in touch with us as well. And maybe we'll get more out of HMRC ourselves as well. Julie Selby, who runs Selby Marketing Services in Ashton-under-Lyne in Greater Manchester, an HMRC spokesperson, said, "We're sorry customers have experienced delays since the pandemic. We've made good progress recovering our services. Satisfaction is at 80%. We see a record take-up of digital services. We know there's more to do, and we're recruiting more staff to improve areas under pressure." Let us know your experiences on something like that. 85058. You can email us, wakeuptomoney@bbc.co.uk. Pop us a tweet, pop me a tweet, and we'll follow up on that for you. Right, Man City have announced a cryptocurrency trading platform is going to be one of its sponsors for next season. So the club announced that OKX will be its official training kit partner for both the men's and women's first team. The platform has been Man City's official cryptocurrency exchange partner since March. All of these kind of things seem to be stepping up a level in the world of sport and football in particular, don't they? Dan Plumley, Senior Lecturer in Sport Finance at Sheffield Hallam University. Morning, Dan.
Morning, Sean. So
crypto marches on in sport, yet every day on the screens we talk about the plummeting price. How do those two things tally?
Yeah, I think there's a real disconnect at the minute, isn't there? And people will raise eyebrows on this one again because of that very point. I think it is appear to be growing still in sport. It might still be a big thing, but there's so much risk and volatility with the market in general that people will just continue to raise eyebrows with deals like this.
And clearly this is marketed directly at football fans. I mean, do we have any idea if football fans have been disproportionately, or sports fans disproportionately affected and lost money in this crypto collapse that we've seen?
I think we've seen noises that would suggest that from the fan token side of things, and they're not directly cryptocurrencies, but they are linked and in a similar area, and we've seen fans lose out in that regard. Slightly different scheme, as I say, because that's targeting fans with membership rewards and incentives and things, whereas this appears to be just more of a straightforward, trading platform, if straightforward is such a thing with this. But yeah, there has been fans that have been affected, and I think, again, going back to the previous question, I think generally eyebrows are always raised, but again, when it's targeting fans directly, then that seems to, there's negative connotations that can come with that.
And is this just because cryptocurrency is the sector at the moment writing the biggest checks for sport?
I think that's a little bit of it for me. I think we've seen a lot of this come around at a time where revenues have been hit through the pandemic over the last couple of years. And often it's the person that's writing the biggest check in sponsorship in football in particular, because clubs don't want to miss out on that money. And also there's a bit of fear of missing out generally, I think, with this as well, is if it is the next big thing, then you don't want to be the club that misses out. And I think there's a little bit of that going on as well, while there's a lot of kind of uncertainty in this area still.
Always wary on Wake Up to Money about those kind of areas. Dan, thank you. Dan Plumley, Senior Lecturer in Sport Finance at Sheffield Hallam University. Robert Forrester, boss of Vertu. Robert, just briefly, we've had a text come in saying, can you ask your guest what percentage of cars on the road are on finance or HP, says Phil in Prestwich. What proportion is that these days?
Yeah, new cars would be sort of 80% at least. And I think used cars, probably around 45-50% would be on dealer-provided finance.
Interesting. There'll be numbers for us to monitor to see how that holds. Robert, thanks for taking questions left, right and centre and being on the show this morning. Big thanks to Fiona Singh-Cotter as well. Thank you to everybody who's loaded up with tips this morning. If you're hot, come to Northern Ireland. I had to put the heating on last night. No global warming here, says one. Carolyn in Glasgow. Keep your curtains shut during the day. Block out any sun shining through the windows. Somebody else loving the Fahrenheit chat from New York. That's it from Wake Up to Money.
Wake Up to Money from BBC 5 Live.